Well, hello again, Ricecast family. We are back with another episode of the Ricecast. So glad that you're joining us. I am sitting here across the table from the one, the only, the doctor, the pastor, Willie Rice. Pastor Willie, how are you today?
Doing great. It's, kind of been the post-Easter week around here, so we're kind of enjoying all the stories of what God did and the great weekend that we had. But we're doing great, and just a great time of year. A lot of things to be excited about.
It was a special Easter weekend here at Calvary, for sure. Started with the Good Friday service Friday here. Was outstanding. I don't know enough good words to say about that Good Friday
It was
service.
fantastic. I just, I want to just stop here and say just not only about that, but the whole weekend, there's so many people that work so hard, so many volunteers, so many of our staff that really just, they step up, they understand what's at stake, and I just want to give a shout out to all the people who worked so very hard to make the weekend the special weekend it was. Thank you for what you did. It wouldn't have happened without you, and it was special, I think, because of what we've been through, what we missed last year. So I think it just made this Easter more meaningful maybe than most.
Yeah, you felt it, I think, with all the services we were able to do. I was hosting some online, and my family was able to come to one, and it did. The room felt like this was just built up. We wanted to.
Yeah, there was an energy in some of several of them were overall it was the biggest crowd obviously since COVID hit, and I guess maybe it stretched back 2 years. I don't remember the December weekend in 2019, Christmas. That maybe that was bigger, but probably it's been about the biggest crowd in 2 years, and so many people were back for the first time. Whether it was a strict protocol service or the others. I met people constantly who were back for the first time. It's our time back.
Yeah.
And it was so good to see them back, and they were emotional being back on campus. And so it was just a beautiful thing to see, and there was energy, particularly in those services where it was full. We had several that were full, and others that we created them on purpose so people would have space. But in all of them, I think there was a great joy and appreciation for being able to be here.
It was, it really, I think all of us the last couple of days have been slowly coming down a little bit off of what was just a really fun, exciting. And then there's also, especially here at Calvary, maybe being a little candid, I mean, we were excited about Christmas Eve, and then that sort of wasn't able to go the way we wanted it to. So to be excited, to be nervous, to be anxious, and then to have it go so well and see so many people we haven't seen in so long, it was I think the whole team here, we're all still very hyped, and it was just a really great weekend.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Good Friday service. I didn't mean to jump off that too quick, but for those who were there, watched it online, that really was special.
Yeah.
I kind of walked away from that thinking, okay, it feels like we're back. It kind of like, wow, that felt like we're used to Calvary feeling, and then of course it just carried through the weekend. So thanks again to everybody. It was great. I hope for those we were able to see for the first time, I hope many of them are coming back. It's time for most people to begin to come back again. We've said all along the way, we understand their situations, and some people are need to be more cautious than others. But for many, many, many people, I would dare say most, who are able to come and able to attend and able to connect, it's time to be coming back. It's important to be coming back. And again, that in no way disparages our great online crowd, which you work with every week. We're so grateful for that and grateful for that opportunity. And so we rejoice in that. And yet there's something special about being in the group and being with people and gathering. And so we rejoice in that also.
Yeah, and online it was special. I mean, there were so many people gathered with us. I know we had probably every other week we bring them up here on the podcast. We have such a group from Canada that participates online, and they were so grateful to be able.
It's almost like we have a Canadian campus.
We do. A
Calvary,
Canadian
Canada.
Campus.
It's our Canadian campus
Up there. Cam and June and others shouts out. But yeah, they were. It was a great week online, and it was a great service online. It was just a really special weekend all the way around. It was another reason it was kind of extra special this year. We got to, if you haven't already heard the original Calvary worship song that Brad Noblet and the team put together. It was kind of done, I think, with eyes on Easter. The song is called "Power of the Cross."
Power of the Cross, great song, and I think we've put it out on social media so you can download it and get it whatever your device is, whatever you use. And Brad, I kind of fussed at him. I said, you're a little understated on that. Because he's being modest, he's being humble, and so I'm kind of saying that tongue in cheek. But I think he was one of the primary authors. I think there was a bit of a collaboration there, but kind of the primary author. And I don't know, is that a thing, like primary author?
I think I think it's well said.
But they wrote it, and it was produced, and then we've sung it for a couple of times over the last month or so, and it's a great song, and it really fit well on Easter about what. The power of the cross and how Christ has set us free. And such a great song. We'll be singing it again. And for others listening to this, if you haven't downloaded it, go on our platforms and you'll see that we've promoted it. And get that song, spread it around.
Yeah.
And we'd like to see it take off.
Super fun. It just is fun to have, our team. I know Brad wrote it in collaboration with some other people. I know there was a Nashville producer involved, but I know our team here, our worship leaders, that team was the energy behind the birth.
And they hope to do more of that. That's one of the things that our guys are gifted in and want to become more gifted in, and in the sense of just, God gives you gifts, but then you've got to use those. You've got to, and you get better as you use them. And Brad's written some great songs, and we want him to continue to write songs. He and the other guys also. That was part of what's fun on the Good Friday service, is we're able to have all the worship leaders from across all three campuses. Matt, Bradley. We have two Brads. So there's a Bradley.
Right.
I understand Seminole and Brad at Clearwater. Or is that?
Oh, that's a good way to do it.
I don't know. If
Bradley and Brad.
That you're calling them by their last name, but the redheaded guy, and then bald-headed guy, right? I don't know. Is that fair to say, Brad? Just the short-haired guy.
Well, on our Calvary staff, when you say the bald-headed guy,
there's a lot. There's a lot of starting with the pastor,
from the top down.
But you've got having all three of those guys together, along with our other team. Jen Smith, of course, always does a fantastic job. Does so much for us, and then just to have all that team and many others. Friday was just that made it special. Also.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And check out Power of the Cross. It's on Spotify, the lyric videos on our YouTube channel. Lots of cool things there. Just a very cool season here at Calvary. Why I bring that up. We got Women's Night of Worship in the Word coming up. We got some Mother's Day things right around the corner. Summer's right around the corner. And we are also kicking off a new series starting this week. You talked about it some on Easter. Right. We're calling it Question Your Answers.
Right.
Great title, by the way. Pastor.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know if that might be. I don't know if it's original with me or I stole it somewhere. But it's what we want to say in the next 4 weeks. I think the idea of this series came last summer when I read through a little ebook by Tim Keller about winning the West again, and he talked about the challenge of evangelism in this Western secular culture, and it kind of gave some fresh insight. A lot of times we approach apologetics. And let me back up and say, one of the things I like to do, we've done this, if people are paying attention, they'll notice we've done this a bit.
Yeah.
Not every year, but we've done it a lot. Where between Easter and Mother's Day, usually have, 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. And we'll often do a series that I'm thinking about the person who's come on Easter for the first time or the first time in a while. And I really want them to come back. And I want to deal, it's almost like an apologetic series. And again, our listeners know apologetics isn't about apologizing. It means to give a defense of the faith, an explanation for the faith. So there have been several years where we did things about whether you're wrestling with doubt or wrestling with questions. And so it's a good time to do that. And then we have a beach baptism coming up the first weekend in May, which is a great time. Again, people have come, and many times they're ready to make decisions for Christ. But one of the things that Keller says in his book is if we've got to almost rethink evangelism a little bit. Now, some things never change, but rethink it in this sense. Sometimes we come to unbelievers and we we want to answer the questions that we assume they're asking, and so we kind of frame it of, we know you're asking these questions, how do I trust the Bible? It's what we've done in the past. How do I know the Bible's true? How do I know there's a God? How do I know Jesus is the only way? And so we provide answers for the questions. You almost have to back it up a step and say, not that we're going to answer your questions. We just want to invite you to question your answers. Question your answers. Because what you're seeing in a postmodern concept is that there isn't really an answer. There isn't really such a thing as truth. And you don't even see some people like, I'm seeking the truth or I'm asking questions. So sometimes where you have to start is just, hey, listen, question your answers.
Yeah.
You think you've got answers. You think you've got some assumptions. You've made some conclusions about life and God and truth, etc. That's created this little framework for your life. And maybe what Jesus does is say, hey, why don't you just, before you take another step, before you just run on past this whole Easter church thing, why don't you just question some of your answers?
Yeah.
Are you sure? And that's kind of what we're doing over the next 4 weeks, is just inviting lovingly. I think it's a fun series. I don't think anyone will be offended. It's not in your face. It's not come and we smack you around with a verbal assault and try to talk condescendingly to you. It's more of, hey, let's just question some of the popular answers that are out there today, and let's at least contrast them to what Jesus actually said.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe the journey is just the crack in the door. Okay, question your answers.
Yeah.
And then we can get to the questions, and then we can get to the answers.
Right.
So
it's going to be a fun series. Yeah, we're talking about some really interesting things. We met some as a team to talk about ways that we'll be unpacking this over the next couple of weeks. So I'm really excited about it. But we also thought it would be a good time to maybe get some questions. So there's going to be some questions we're going to be tackling on Sunday mornings. And then we thought this podcast could be a great place to tackle some of the questions from you, the listeners, and from other people that are following us on social media, which is a great opportunity then to plug, if you're not already following Calvary on Instagram, at calvary.us, or on Facebook, follow Calvary Church. So we put out there just what are some questions, again, just in the nature of the series. Let's tackle some questions. And we're going to continue to do this. So if you have a question that you'd like answered, or something you've always wondered or just been curious about, we'd love to hear from you. We would love to tackle that here on the podcast in these next couple weeks. But we put that out, just follow up to Easter, and I wanted to tackle at least one of those questions today.
Yeah, and we'll try to tackle the others, even if we have to write a blog or do a post or something. Somewhere along the way, every question that's that we can tackle, we'll try to somewhere address it.
Yeah. So this is a question I want to tackle in this particular podcast, or one I at least want to start with. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read the question. So I've been a Christian my whole life. I made Christianity my own faith rather than my parents' faith at 12. That being said, I've been struggling with depression and severe anxiety for over a year now. I have faith that God has a plan and a purpose for me and my life, but I can't help but feel hopeless. Every day is the same, and I feel as though my hope is fading. I'm holding on because God doesn't do things in our time. My question is, how do I keep faith or even strengthen my faith, even in my doubt?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's so many layers to it. I want to say, first of all, whoever turned this in, I'm grateful, for the explanation in the second sentence in the first one. It kind of, again, allowing people to explain all the depths of this, because sometimes when somebody says, I've been a Christian my whole life, I kind of want to stop them and go, okay, wait, let's make sure you understand what we're talking about when we talk about, what biblically does it mean to follow Christ, because in that sense, no one is their whole life, but I also understand what I think the writer meant, and that, maybe I've grown up in a Christian context my whole life. It's been my frame of reference. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up going to church, but I love that this person, I started to say she, but I don't know that it's a she. I love that this person said in the second sentence, I made this my own faith, at 12. So she's hearkening back. Again, I don't have a name here, but it is a she. Okay, yeah. And I'll get to why I had that immediate assumption later. But she made it her faith at 12, which, again, we all understand at some point you've got to make the choice to repent and believe. So she made that very, very clear. So someone just heard the first sentence, didn't hear the second sentence. She made that very clear that she's made that choice. And here's what she's saying, though. Let's get to the substance of the question, which is, I'm struggling with depression and severe anxiety. That's the next thing. And then she kind of pressed into that a little bit more, and at the end asked, how do I keep faith even in my doubt?
Yeah.
So she kind of gave a self-diagnosis there, dealing with depression and anxiety,
Right.
and then ask a question. So let's talk about the diagnosis, though. Let's talk about the issue of depression and anxiety. And I think we've touched on it before, but it's a good one to talk about, and I don't know that we've even begun to plumb the depths of that conversation. Yeah. I want to, first of all, let's say I'm talking to that person right now.
Yeah.
I would say to you, first of all, how I'm just proud of you, and I just congratulate you on being able to say it as clearly and succinctly and as honestly as you did. Unfortunately, when you start talking about what some people call mental health issues, like depression or anxiety, and people... Well, let me just say this. When we start talking about those things in the church, you just get a lot of funny ideas. Look, I get that mental health itself is a very ambiguous title, and I get that ambiguous things can be overused. They can be misused. We can label things mental health issues that really, it's just like an easy label.
Yeah.
Okay. But so I get that. And, so sometimes people want to disparage mental health issues because it's overused, or in some cases it's been misused or misdiagnosed. But that is not to say that these aren't real things.
Yeah.
These are real things.
Right.
Depression is a real thing. Anxiety is a real thing that people are struggling with. And I think sometimes one of the reasons we have a difficult time talking about that in the church is because we want to believe, and we do believe, that the gospel is the antidote to sadness, to depression, to despair, and our preaching sometimes suggests that because we talk about the joy that you find with Christ. If you're sad, if you're depressed, to come and trust in Christ, and very often that burden, whatever has caused that, may be lifted by someone coming and trusting in Christ. It may be lifted immediately. I've seen people whose countenance changed almost from the moment they came to an altar and trusted Christ. But does that mean that if you are a Christian and you have a relationship with Christ, that you'll never struggle with depression or, let's say, anxiety? And again, anxiety is another thing that can be maybe such a broad term that again, a lot of things get lumped in there. And again, we think of all the verses that tell us to not be anxious, to not be fearful. So again, there is a thinking that we sometimes have as Christians that if you are following, here's what we're thinking. Even if we don't say it quite this, crassly, quite this in-your-face way.
Right.
We think if you're following Jesus and you're living for the Lord, you're not going to suffer depression and you're not going to be anxious. That's kind of the unspoken conclusion, and that maybe even this person is dealing with. And honestly, it's not only the unspoken conclusion. Sometimes it's said out loud, and a lot of times it's inferred. In other words, if you're struggling with depression, something's wrong with you. And if you're struggling with anxiety, something's wrong with you in the sense that you're just not walking with the Lord. You're not. And I've heard people, when somebody will say, I'm struggling with this or that, they will say, you just need to trust in the Lord. You just need to pray more. You just need to have quiet time. You just need to go to church. You need to confess your sin. What is wrong with you?
Right.
That you are dealing with this. And even to the point that some would say there's no such thing as mental health issues. Again, very few people would say it that way, but they kind of are saying it. Well, I think they're wrong. I think there are mental health issues. And I think depression is a thing. And I think people struggling with anxiety is a thing. And I guess part of it is, one, there are many reasons for that. One is I've talked to too many people. But number two, I've read the Bible. Okay, it's not just talking to people. People say, oh, you're just putting it on people's experience. I thought you were supposed to be a Bible preacher. Well, read read Psalms. Okay, more than half the Psalms are written from a place of despair. A place of sadness, a place of brokenness. a place of question. You say, well, you shouldn't question God. Read the Psalms.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they're questioning God all the time. Where are you?
Yeah.
How long am I going to have to wait? Why haven't you answered me?
Yeah.
Why am I still suffering? These questions are answered, are asked constantly in the Psalms. So look at the Bible. Listen to people. Read Christian history. Some of the greatest Christian leaders who have ever lived. Spurgeon comes to mind. One of the great preachers of the 18th century. Or did I get that? The 1800s, 17.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
yeah. You know how that is. You get there.
Yeah.
That's anyway. Forget it. All right, the 1800s.
That's right.
I'll have to think about that later. The point is, some of the great Christian leaders in history have struggled with darkness and sadness and despair, and so we get that. And so you see it in Christian history, you see it in the Bible, you see it in the book, the Psalms, and most of us have seen it in our own life, even if the levels may differ from person to person.
Yeah.
So I absolutely know that there are times in which Christians will struggle with questioning God, will struggle with feelings that we ascribe to as being depressed or anxious. So I want to say to every person who feels that way, you are not there. You are courageous to say so. I want to say there's nothing wrong with you. By that I mean there's nothing weird. There's nothing like, oh, I'm not a Christian, or maybe God doesn't love me,
right,
or maybe God has abandoned me. That none of those conclusions are warranted.
Yeah.
What you are dealing with, I promise you, others have dealt with.
Yeah.
And if you share your story in a group, I can promise you there are people who can empathize and say, I have been where you are, which is why Christian fellowship is so important.
Yeah.
So I just want to affirm this question. And then the second thing is, okay, she asked, how do I keep faith, right, even in my own doubts?
Right. I feel like, to me, when I read it, it's born out of this line, I can't but feel hopeless. Every day is the same, and I feel as though hope is fading. So it's like, how do you – the doubt she references at the end, to me, sounds a bit like, I doubt things will get better.
Yeah.
I doubt that I'll turn this corner.
Okay.
And how do I my question is, how do I keep faith or even somehow strengthen my faith even in my doubt?
That's a great – well, I want to say two things. One – I want you to know that doubt is not the opposite of faith. To me, that's very, very profound. One of my favorite books on this is John Ortberg's book, Faith and Doubt, and because they coexist. We see this in the Bible with the man who cried out to the Lord, I believe. Then he said, help me in my unbelief.
Yeah.
Like, I believe, help me where I'm struggling to believe. Like, I trust you. I want to trust you.
Right.
I do believe you. But I'm also struggling with unbelief.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think sometimes there is this sense of faith is the absence of any doubt. No, if faith is belief, then the opposite of faith is, I suppose, unbelief. It is but I don't think unbelief and doubt are the same thing. Doubt to me is faith struggling. It's faith struggling. It shows you something struggles when it's alive. It's faith wrestling with questions. It's faith wrestling with realities. It is faith warring against these things that I can't accept or understand, and so I'm at turmoil in my soul. That's what doubt is, right? So I'm always encouraged when somebody says, I'm struggling with doubt. Good.
Yeah.
The person, that I'm concerned about the most is the person that has no struggles at all, the person who says, I don't care. It's almost like apathy is the opposite of faith.
Right.
It's not that that's true because it's unbelief that would be the opposite of faith, but I think apathy might be the most common manifestation of unbelief.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
It looks like, I just don't care.
Right.
Well, let's talk about your doubts about God. No, I don't care.
Right.
Well, let's talk about what you think about the Bible. I don't care.
Right.
Well, that is the expression of someone who has embraced unbelief. I just don't believe it. It's not, I don't care. Even if somebody tells me they're an agnostic, I get hopeful. Somebody tells me, well, I'm hopeful. It's like, because they thought about it enough to put a name to it. It's like they've acknowledged there's a little bit of, I don't know. I kind of, when you ask questions, I don't know the answer. Great. I can work with that. Let's go.
Right.
Let's start. Let's lean into, okay, where are the tension points? What don't you know?
But the presence of tension or conflict isn't necessarily. I've heard some ways. I think I had a person who did couples therapy a lot, and they said they were less concerned about a couple that was kind of arguing than they were about a couple who wasn't speaking.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You're arguing. You're at least you got a dog in the fight. You're still trying to get to somewhere. But when you've got to the point where
you've shut down,
I'm done.
I've shut down.
That's a much more dangerous place.
And so I just want to say to this person and to everyone, because I promise you, listening to this, and I know we have thousands upon thousands of listeners, if you're struggling with doubt, you're normal.
Yeah.
Okay. Indeed, that faith is real in you because you are. You're saying, on the one hand, I believe these things about God and what the Bible tells me about God. On the other hand, I'm struggling with my present reality, and I'm trying to reconcile those things. Now, how do you do that? How do you do that? I would say the first counsel I would give is that I think you have to approach depression, anxiety, these mental health challenges two ways. I think you have to approach it from a spiritual standpoint, and you have to approach it from a physical standpoint. Now, if you want a scripture for this, go study about Elijah when he crashed kind of on God. He had run after Mount Carmel, and then Jezebel comes after him, and the Bible tells us he runs away into the wilderness, and he falls down. And what happens is he sleeps. And then when God wakes him up, God gives him water, provides water, and then he rests some more. And then God sends him to a cave where God speaks to him. Now, there's a moment in which you just see he was tired and he was physically weary.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, you have to approach some things physically. If you broke your arm, you'd go to the doctor. I mean, you would pray, I'd hope. You'd come in here and say, Pastor, I broke my arm.
Yeah.
Anthony, why'd you break your arm? I was jumping off the roof. I broke my arm. Would you pray for me? Yes, I will pray for you. And then I will pray that you will have good sense to go to the doctor because your arm is broken.
Right.
And we know how to reset that. So is it good to pray? Of course it's good to pray.
Yeah.
But there's a physical, we are both body and spirit. So you must approach these things both physically and spiritually. So here's what I would say to this sister. I would say, first of all, yes, approach it spiritually. Okay, how do I do that? Well, that's where community and wisdom comes into play.
Yeah.
I would say to her, as a woman, lean in to community with other women. And that's why community is so important. That's why you have to be in a group. So when these things happen, you're not starting from zero. But let's say you are starting from zero. Well, where are the godly women in your life? Who do you look to? And if you're looking for somebody to kind of give you an example or to help you, look for somebody often that's older. Not always. That's not always a rule of thumb, because you can find people younger than you that are great, maybe spiritual leaders. But look for somebody maybe a little older because they've been through more things in life.
Yeah.
Like if you're a young married woman, look for somebody who's been married 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
Here's what you don't want to do. You're struggling in your marriage. You've been at it 6 months. You think your husband's a jerk because you can't believe men are like this. And the 3 girls that you hang out with and go out with, they're all divorced or they're all single.
Sure.
Right. That's not going to help you much.
Yeah.
You want to get with that a seasoned, godly, spiritual woman who's been married 20 years.
Right.
And she can sit down and just, she's been through things.
Yeah.
So look for someone older. Look for someone that you just look at as spiritually wiser and more mature than you.
Yeah.
It's very important who you're listening to. That person may be easy to locate in your life. And if so, talk to them. Now, don't frighten them off, okay? Everyone's busy. Everyone's got stuff. So here's the way you don't want to approach it. You don't want to approach somebody and go, hey, would you mentor me? I need an hour a day for the next 37 years. No, zero. No chance that'll happen, okay? If someone will give you that, they are not the mentor you want anyway, okay? The person you want is going to run from that. So you don't want that. That's a codependency. No, don't do that.
Sure.
But here's what you can do. You can say to, first of all, if you have a good relationship with someone, can I buy you lunch? You say, well, I don't know which godly woman. Well, approach a godly woman or a godly man in the case of a man and say, listen, can can I buy you coffee or lunch one day? I have 4 questions I want to ask you. And I'm just asking people that are a little older in the faith, a little wiser in the faith. And I promise you, I won't bug you. I promise you, all I need is 30. Ask for 30 minutes. They'll probably give you an hour. Okay.
Right.
Well, if you listen, if they don't have time for that, can I call you? In other words, get on there and say, I need to ask you 4 questions about walking with the Lord. Yeah. Don't expect them to be a mental health professional expert. Mm-hmm. Don't expect them to be a psychiatrist. But it's amazing the wisdom you would find if you're a young woman. You would sit down with older women, mm-hmm. one that you think of as spiritually wise, and say, "Could I just ask 4 questions?" Mm-hmm. And one of the questions, make the first one an easy one, like I don't know, like make it an easy one, like I don't know, how do you fix spaghetti or something? Make it an easy one, so you check one. But then you ask a question like, "So, have you ever dealt with discouragement or even depression? And if so, what did you do?"
Yeah.
And sit back and let the waterfall come. Because I want to tell you, there is a high likelihood, if you will sit down with an older sister in the Lord and you ask a question just like that, have you ever dealt with depression or discouragement? And if so, what did you do? That you're going to get incredible counsel.
Yeah.
You're going to get incredible counsel. And who knows, it might turn into a relationship that you meet with often, frequently. Yeah. That'll either happen or it won't. Don't force it on somebody. But what I would say to this sister is talk to somebody.
Yeah.
If you need a spiritual counselor, we have spiritual pastoral counselors that we can recommend. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes it's just that wise, godly person in your life that you say, "Hey, could I ask you 4 questions sometime?" And then they'll probably give you 5 questions. You'll lose track of the questions. Okay.
Yeah.
But what you do is you send the signal that I understand there's a limit to what you can give me. I need some help here.
Yeah.
Now approach it spiritually is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Read your Bible, pray, make sure you're in church, do all those things. Go back and listen to our series from Lamentations last year.
Yeah.
Last August. Go back and listen to our series from Lamentations. But sit down with a godly spiritual person and so deal with it spiritually. Have somebody who's praying for you. Mm-hmm. Share your struggle with somebody when you have the relationship where you can do it. Okay? So you need to deal with it spiritually. Being in church, reading the Bible, under the preaching of God's Word, and having somebody specifically praying for you. Mm-hmm. Now, also deal with it physically.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid of sitting down with a trusted doctor. Mm-hmm. Do not be afraid if you even have to go to a mental health professional, psychologist or psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. Start with your doctor. Start with whoever you know. Say, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm struggling with. What do you recommend? And by the way, doctors are not omniscient, understand, just because they have doctor in front of their name. So, you have to use your own good judgment.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to say. So many Christians have an aversion to that.
Right.
Of seeking help from a mental health professional. I just want to say it's not a silver bullet. It's not like there's one person that's going to fix all your problems. There isn't a magic pill out there that they're going to give you that blinko presto, everything is right.
Right.
But there are very real physiological problems that people deal with.
Yes. Yep.
And don't be afraid. That's not my field.
Right.
But don't be afraid, starting with your own medical doctor if you need to say, here's what I'm struggling with. What should I do?
Yeah.
And talking to a mental health professional, because in some cases, listen, I understand people are overprescribed at times, and I understand not every doctor knows what they're doing. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, get rid of this aversion of being willing to say to someone, I may need physical help. Because there are times there are chemical, physiological things happening, and you may need some help. It may not even be for a long season.
Yeah, right.
Okay, it may be a short season to help get things fixed. Let me just tell you this story. Tommy Nelson was a pastor, and he was going. You could probably Google his story. I don't know exactly where, but if you probably Google Tommy Nelson mental health crisis, you probably get this story. Okay. And he tells this story, that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago now, where he went through an anxiety attack. He crashed. He's a pastor of a big church. Big ministry, and he crashed. And his first thought was, this doesn't happen to people like me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then he talks about, though, how he did have to finally go to a doctor. And here's the way he explained it to me. It helped me so much when he talked about going to a mental health doctor. actually getting a prescription. He did need that. He said, what I realized was I had gotten into a hole. Think of it as a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
And my stress, not handling things, not having good boundaries, a lot of spiritual stuff had contributed to me getting into a hole. Mm-hmm. And what I needed was the help of some medicine or a physician to be able to get out of the hole.
Yeah.
To deal with the spiritual stuff.
Right.
It's almost like it's not physical as opposed to spiritual. It's physical and spiritual.
Yeah, that's right.
So get some help to get out of the hole, and at the same time, be working on the spiritual things in your life so you can see what helped contribute to get you in the hole.
Yeah.
And be willing to make some changes in your spiritual life, but also be willing to talk to a doctor and be willing to address any physical things. Because very often it's going to be, you're going to have to come at it from both those fronts. So Elijah got rest, he got something to eat and drink, and he heard from God.
Right.
You need both.
Right.
You need both.
Right. And I think that's another misnomer on the physical element of that is that, it kind of is like, well, it's always going to end with some kind of like prescription medication. Like that. There's a lot of times where a doctor they're going to ask you questions about your sleep schedule.
Right.
Like legitimately they are. I mean, it's a Bible story you referenced, but that's true today. I heard a while ago about the HALT method, a little quick mental check of yourself when you're in a state you don't really know why. And it's HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Right.
And 3 of those are 100% physical, right? Hungry, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It's just a little check you do.
Yep.
But 2 of those, hungry, tired, are physical needs that can be met.
Yep.
So that's a great word. Even drinking water. I mean, there's little things you can do that have dramatic impact.
Here's what you can't do. You can't keep going on exactly like you're going.
Yeah, right.
When you know there's a problem, you have to, there's a warning light on the dashboard, stop and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Because you're going to crash at some point.
That's good.
So make some changes physically, make some changes spiritually. Look, do you know how many, and I have no idea, again, who this young woman is or what her age is, I guess. I'm assuming young, but she could be an older woman. But I would say this. So many younger women have struggled with bouts of anxiety and depression. I mean, for instance, we call it postpartum depression. Yeah. It's such a thing that we have a name for it.
Yeah.
It's so predictable and diagnosable that we have a name for it. Yeah. That when women have given birth, oftentimes in the wake of that, there will be a period of depression.
Yep.
This is... I've run out of how many women you talk to. Almost to the point where a woman will say, I'm feeling depressed. You ask about 3 or 4 questions, and you go, well, let me tell you what's going on. Okay? You're going through what a lot of people, and again, it may have nothing to do with childbirth, but it may have to do with something else. And so, yes, there are things that are very predictable, very understandable, and listen, you can get through this. You can get on the other side of this. And even if you continue throughout your life to struggle with, let's say, a proneness to anxiety or depression, it doesn't mean your life is not worth living. It's not beautiful. It's not good. And that these things can't be managed, even if they're a part of your journey.
That's right.
Again, with God's help and seeing, the eternal perspective that the Lord gives us, even if they are things you have to manage and deal with all of your life, they can be managed and they can be dealt with, and your journey is worth it, and life is good and beautiful and a gift of God. So don't think that your doubt is an absence of God's hand. It's not. Go back and listen to our series on Lamentations from last year. Don't believe that because you doubt you don't have faith. Don't believe that because you're going through something God has abandoned you. And don't think that you can just, it's automatically going to get better, though. Take a look at it from a spiritual standpoint. Talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Make sure you're in the right place, getting the right information in your life so that God can speak to you. But I guess the big thing I would say is talk to somebody.
Yeah,
get somebody praying. There's power in sitting down with another person and saying, this is what I feel. This is what I'm dealing with. Could you just pray for me?
Yeah.
Don't expect them to have an answer.
Oh, yeah.
They may or may not have an answer. But you know what? Saying, hey, listen, I don't expect you to solve my problem.
Right.
I just need to know somebody that I respected and loved was praying for me.
Yeah.
It's amazing what will happen.
Yeah.
Amazing what will happen. And then approach it physically.
Yeah.
Be willing to talk to a doctor. Be willing to talk to a mental health professional and say, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm going through. What would you suggest? As you said, they'll start asking all kinds of questions.
Right.
Maybe there's a prescription. Maybe it's a prescription for a while. Maybe it's a prescription for a short time. Some people need things. They have mental health issues they have to deal with the rest of their life. Well, you know what? You just need to understand this is my life. Some people have this problem. Some people have that problem. Some people have this challenge. This is my challenge.
Right.
But I can deal with it.
Yeah.
With God's help, I'm going to deal with it. So approach it physically, approach it spiritually.
I just want to shout out, too, one thing you mentioned earlier that I just think is so good, too. You said find someone you can talk with, sit down, and have, maybe 4 or 5 questions, intentional questions. I even just want to just spotlight the practice of getting these things down into articulatable questions is so helpful. Because sometimes what you really have is one question, but it's spiraled. And because it's shaken the foundation a little bit, you've started to go, I don't know what's what anymore. But the more that you can rein that down and a word you just said just now, don't expect everybody to have, especially if it's a hard, complicated question.
They don't know
They might not have the answer exactly, but that you will find out. People are asking similar questions. People have asked similar questions.
When you're looking for someone to mentor you or to influence you, the thing you don't want to do is, again, ask them to do what they're not capable of doing. They can't solve your problems. They don't have a silver bullet. They don't have magic potion to give you. But there is power and wisdom. And when people have walked the path and they've walked with the Lord, and this is why older women need to mentor younger women and older men need to mentor younger men. This is why we need to have discipling relationships. This is why you need to be in a group because that's where you'll find some of those connections.
Yeah.
And you can pull someone aside. So, again, don't jump, like I said, I kind of said it tongue-in-cheek, don't jump all over them and say, I need an hour a day for 37 years. I need you to solve my problems. They will turn and run if they are sane because they know they can't.
Right.
But you can say, hey, that's why my exercise of have 4 questions ready. Yeah. 4 questions, and one of them's an easy one.
Yeah.
So 4 questions makes what you just said. It makes you think through.
Yeah.
And it will save you a lot of time and energy. And again, even if they don't have an answer, to be able to empathize with you, to be able to listen and pray for you is a huge part of the battle.
And I love too. I just want to say it. You said it. That person's maybe a stage above you. That can be very helpful. Yep. There's wisdom in people that are much older than you, much further ahead in their journey. But if you are maybe single, you're in school or whatever, if someone's just a little bit above you, that person can speak so much. If nothing else, because I know this is what this question had something to do with, but to say, I went through what you went through, and I'm still here, and I'm still doing it,
still surviving,
still trekking through.
My marriage went through that. Yeah. I went through that. I've had that experience. There's such power in that, isn't there? Like if you, and we all know this, like if today you were diagnosed with some kind of disease, I don't want to even hypothetical, but let's say all of a sudden you're diagnosed with a disease. Suddenly, you know what you're looking for? People who have been there.
Yeah, right.
I have this.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're going, has anyone else ever had this?
Yeah.
5 people raise their hand.
Right.
Oh yeah, my kid had this. I had this. My father had this. What happened? This happened. This happened. This happened. By the way, we got through it.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I can get through it. And so there's power. That's why community, we talk about community here and valuing the power of transforming relationships. It isn't that somebody has a magic bullet answer. It's that they can say, I've been through a dry spell in my marriage. I've been through depression. I've struggled with that addiction. I had that illness. And let me tell you, I got through it. I got to the other side. Life is good. God is good. And you can make it too. So lean into that relationship. Ask God to show you who it is you can talk to. Don't frighten them off. I've told you how to do it so that you won't frighten them off. And most of the time, people are glad to be asked for a little bit of advice. And if they're godly, spiritual, they're happy to do it. If you can't take them to lunch, ask if you can have a 15-minute phone call. Take what they give you. That's one of the things you need to understand about people. Take what they give you. Don't ask for more. Take what they give you. And if they see that you're humble and you're not asking them to do more than they're capable of doing, they'll probably give you more than you're asking.
Yeah.
They'll be generous with their time. And if one is not, find another one. Don't be discouraged.
Yeah.
But people have the answer, the wisdom, if they've been walking with the Lord that you need.
And it's a great time to be talking about this because, the question of it's tough, days aren't getting better. We're coming off of the weekend where we celebrate the resurrection, where we celebrate it will get better. Like that Jesus wins. It is the end of this story. These things don't have the last word.
Right.
So there's great hope to be found in that. Obviously, it was special to get to celebrate that and spotlight that as we do every Sunday, which you mentioned. But it was a great weekend and a great time to tackle this question. We're going to tackle more questions in the time to come. So please reach out. Social media is kind of the best, cleanest way. You can message the Facebook page. You can message on Instagram. We would love to hear your questions. Tackle more of these questions. Thank you to whoever sent this question. It was great. As Pastor Willie mentioned several times, it's courageous to say these things out loud, to say, I believe, my faith is important to me. I believe these things with all my heart. I'm still dealing with this. That's courageous. We applaud you. And for everybody else with questions, send them in. We'll tackle them. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks. And we'll be back with another episode of the podcast next week.